So my name is Céline Ricci and I'm the director of Ars Minerva. If you're not familiar with us, our main mission is to bring back to life forgotten operas from the 17th century and 18th century. So tonight's session is dedicated to composer Joseph de Bologne, Chevalier de Saint-Georges. So we're going to have great music by great artists, and they're here with us tonight. So we have with us Laura Rubinstein Salzedo. Hello, Laura.
Hi.
We have Michele Kennedy. Hi, Michele.
Hi.
And we have Gino also. Hi, Kevin.
Hello, good evening, everyone.
Thank you for being with us tonight. And so Jory Vinikour is not here with us tonight because he's in Paris. He's rehearsing right now in Paris Opera. And so I just would like to say that the artist recorded the music with a software called ACappella. So they were not together. So they recorded separately, and then with the software, everything is put together. So thank you so much for doing all this. But now let's go into the life of Joseph de Bologne, Chevalier de Saint-Georges. It's an amazing life and lots of things to say. Of course, not everything is possible to say because his life was so full, right? Joseph was born in 1745 on the island of Guadeloupe. He was the son of planter Georges de Bologne and Anne, called Nanon, who was only 16 and the slave of his own wife, Elisabeth American. And the name of Saint-Georges was after one of his father plantation in Guadeloupe called Saint-Georges. So when Joseph was only 8, they moved to Paris, the family moved to Paris. And when he was 13, he started attending the very famous fencing academy of Nicolas Le Texier de la Boissière. And so the mornings at the academy consisted in mathematics, history, foreign languages, music, drawing, and dance. And the afternoons were dedicated to the most important subject, fencing. So Joseph trained alongside the son of La Boissière and became a friend of the family. And La Boissière later wrote that Saint-Georges was the most extraordinary man of arms ever seen. And at only age 19, Joseph was part of l'Office d'écuyer, conseiller du roi, contrôleur ordinaire des guerres, and it made him an officer at the public ministry to carry the orders of the kings to the war tribunal. And actually, he wasn't 19, he was 17 only. And the minimum age for this office was actually 25, but Joseph was so extraordinary, really prodigy child. And so at 17, he wasn't even not graduated from the fencing academy, and he had this title and really became Chevalier at this time. And he was considered to be the best fencer in France and even in Europe, and people from all over Europe would travel to Paris to defy him. So here are some already accomplishments on the military and athletic side, and it's really extraordinary. But now let's talk about the musician. So when Joseph was a child, we don't know really where he started learning music. Historians think that maybe his father started teaching him violin, but Joseph was actually violinist virtuoso, and he also played harpsichord very well. And so certainly that when he was at the fencing academy, he pursued his music lesson as well as dance lesson, apparently. And we know that also in Paris, his violin teacher was Jean-Marie Leclerc, who was a very famous violinist. and he's known for having actually created the French school of violin, and he composed the opera Scylla and Glaucus. And also another of his teacher was François-Joseph Gossec. This was a composition teacher. And François-Joseph Gossec was also the founder and director of an orchestra called Le Concert des Amateurs. And Le Concert des Amateurs was in residence at the Palais de Soubise, which still exists in Paris, and it's at 60 Rue des Francs-Bourgeois. I think it's a nice place to have an orchestra in residence there. And Joseph was actually the concertmaster, while Gossec was the director. And they both premiered their own compositions there. And they were actually among the first French composer to compose string quartets, symphonie concertante, and quartet concertant as well. And also Le Chevalier first string quartet were performed during 71 and 73 with this orchestra. And actually in 73, he became the conductor of this orchestra and also the director of this orchestra. But let's jump a little bit with the composition, and we have here a first piece that he wrote in 1780. And Laura, can you tell us a little bit more about this piece?
Yeah, sure. Can you guys hear me okay? Okay. So he wrote a few violin sonatas. They're 2 movements long, which was somewhat unusual. Mostly they're 3 or 4 even, but the 2 movements is unique. We're only performing the first movement. His sonatas were classical in style with fully written out keyboard parts. So before this, in the Baroque times, they had a bass line and then they would kind of make up what they feel like in the right hand. But he decided to go further with that and actually write out the keyboard part completely. Many of his contemporaries in nearby places were still writing just the bass lines, but he never wrote figured bass in his violin sonatas, which is kind of interesting. So 30 years before these were published, Tort started coming up with new bows. So these are the bows that you know of today, the modern bows. These are, so 30 years before he was composing, there are these cool new bows. And they are shaped in this concave shape instead of the Baroque bow, which is like a bow and arrow. So that changes things a lot. It allows us to play with more sound and everything's evened out. So the frog is not much stronger than the tip, you know, when you play. So everything's kind of evened out. In the Baroque bow, you have strong, weak. Strong, weak. It's super different from the frog to the tip. So the bows are becoming more even. We can play louder, but also the passage work starts getting more difficult because you can do string crossings and you can do like crazy stuff. And so you'll notice that in his music, he starts writing these crazy passages work. Also the left hand. I don't know if you guys all saw what Céline just posted. The previous slide was his violin concerto, and I started looking at this, and I'm like, oh, this is really hard. So clearly he was a virtuoso, because if you're writing violin music that's hard, then you really know how to play the violin. So anyway, I hope you'll be able to see some of these fancy new bow techniques and finger craziness in our performance, and I hope you love this piece as much as I did.
Thank you, Laura. So Wonderful. Thank you so much, Laura, and also Jory. This was really wonderful. So much joy. So yeah, and Joseph also was not only into instrumental music, he was also into opera. Everyone, almost everyone really loved him in Paris. And he was supported by King Louis XVI and his wife, Queen Marie Antoinette. And he actually was going to become the director of Paris Opera, called at that time l'Académie Royale de Musique. But unfortunately, even with the support of the king and the queen, some soprani at Paris Opera signed a petition, and they didn't want apparently to take order from a director who was not white. And so Joseph withdrew himself because he didn't want to cause any pain or a problem to the queen and the king. But the queen and the king were very angry of what the singers did. And the king, to revenge, took back Paris Opera from Paris to Versailles. So Paris Opera, it was already 100 years that it was in Paris because the King Louis XIV had moved it into Paris. So to revenge, Louis XVI took back it to Versailles, and the Queen only had concerts in her private apartment in Versailles, where Joseph was invited regularly and apparently played his music with for violin with the Queen playing fortepiano. But yeah, he was very much into opera, and he wrote several of them. I want to tell you some of them. So Ernestine wrote in 1777, Lost. La Partie de Chasse, which was a huge success, Lost as well. L'Amant Anonyme, 1780, which we are going to talk about. Also, La Fille Garçon, so the girl boy, also wrote in 1787, Lost. Aline et Dupré, an opera for children, unfortunately Lost. And Guillaume Touqueur, ou Les Amis du Village, 1790, Lost as well. So only some fragments stay here. So the only opera that we have full is L'Amant Anonyme. And so L'Amant Anonyme was created in 1780. The librettist was Madame de Genlis here, who was also a writer. And it was created in a private theater of another lady, La Marquise de Montesson. And actually, La Marquise de Montesson and Madame de Genlis were family. So this opera has been created at her estate. And so we can think that maybe the plot of the opera have been thought to be at her estate. So Leontyne and Valcourt are the main characters of this opera. And so Leontyne is a widow, and when she was 15, her parents first wanted to marry her to Valcourt, but Valcourt thought that she was too young and he didn't marry her. So she married someone else, and then she became a widow, and she made an oath that she would never be in love anymore. But actually, Valcourt had changed his mind about Leontyne, and he doesn't know how to say his love for her. And the reason why the opera is called L Amant Anonyme, the anonymous lover in English. And so he's going, with the help of other people on the estate, he's going to try to play little funny tricks for her, letters, flowers, sending letters, and she's confused and she doesn't know from who this comes. But so we have here actually Valcourt, Kevin Gino, who is going to sing the first aria of this opera. Kevin, can you tell a little bit about this aria?
Yeah, sure. So you already touched on the basic plot points, but what I like about the piece mostly is that, you know, it brings me back to my grade school days. You know, this guy is of a higher status, but his love for Leontyne kind of brings out this youthfulness that he can't quite control, much like everything else, like his outward appearance and how he speaks. So I like what Saint-Georges does with the dichotomy between the waltz, but the turmoil of what he's feeling for Leontyne in the text, and it's a delightful piece.
Exactly, and you're very delightful in it. So. Wonderful. How lovely. Thank you so much, Kevin. Thanks a lot. And then there is another character. So Leontyne, sung here by Michele Kennedy in this extraordinary aria that you sing amazingly well. Can you tell us more, Michele?
Yes, gladly. Thank you. Well, you mentioned this a little bit, Céline, but Leontyne was married happily in an arranged marriage from a young age, and after her husband died, she vowed that she would not love anyone again. And she's protected her heart for all these years. And in the meantime, her trusted friend Valcourt has always loved her. And as you described, you know, he's making his love known in Act 1 of the opera. So by the time we get to Act 2, after Leontyne has had a little bit of a nudge from one of their mutual friends, in this aria, she's finally admitting that she has real feelings for him. And it's a highly emotional aria. It's a da capo aria. And the opening and the closing are very much about the excitement and the love, the joy that she feels. And in the middle, there's a lot of turmoil. She is scared to open up her heart again. She's at points really agitated. She just can't believe how vulnerable this feels. And she's a little trepidatious, but in the end, she's happy because she really loves him.
Thank you. wonderful. Brava. So thank you so much, Michele and Jory, of course. So yes, Joseph was a man of multi-talented, really, man. And as we go forward, I would like to talk about also a fencing match between Saint-Georges and La Chevalier de Saint-Georges in 1787 in London. This was a match that was actually created by the Prince of Wales. And I want to mention this because it was very famous at that time, because La Chevalier de Saint-Georges, Le Chevalier de Saint-Georges, I mean, he should have also an event just was actually a French diplomat, spy, and also soldier. We never really knew during her or his own life if he was a man or a woman. He pretended to be a woman actually while he was a man, but apparently when he died, they did an autopsy and they said it was a man, but also with women features. So this was an extraordinary character who was actually also an amazing fencer. And this match also has been very, very popular throughout Europe. And then, of course, French Revolution. And when the French Revolution started, Joseph was in Lille, and he joined the National Guard. And he became a captain of the National Guard in 1790. And then in 1792, a gentleman called Julien Raymond, who was the leader of a delegation of free men of color from Saint-Domingue in Haiti, petitioned the National Assembly to authorize the formation of a legion of volunteers. And the next day, the Assembly authorized the formation of a cavalry brigade of men of color to be called the Légion Nationale des Américains du Midi, and appointed Saint-Georges colonel of the new regiment. So this is called the Saint-Georges Legion, and it's the first men of color regiment in Europe, who rapidly grew because other men were attracted by the name of Joseph. And among its officers, there was an officer called Thomas Alexandre Dumas, who was the novelist, the famous novelist father, and one of Saint-Georges' two lieutenant-colonels. And so this is extraordinary. The life of Joseph it's incredible. And then Joseph died in 1799 in Paris. And we now have a street in Paris named after him, la rue du Chevalier de Saint-Georges. And as you can see, it's written that he's a compositeur, chef d'orchestre, capitaine de la Garde nationale de Lille, where he was in Lille, and also colonel de la Légion des Américains et du Midi. So I would like to say thank you, Joseph. Thank you, Le Chevalier de Saint-Georges, for everything that you did and for all your amazing composition. Here. And also many thanks to all the artists that have participated to this wonderful event. And thank to everyone who is also here with us tonight.